Hey everyone, still getting back in the groove of things, so I'm going to make some easy and light videos to start, and then I'm going to retransition back into some of my more complex content. But for right now, I have been getting a lot of messages throughout the last few years, people asking me what are my favorite classes, or maybe they think that my favorite class is one thing when it really isn't. So I wanted to clarify that, as well as what my actual favorite subclasses are in the entire game of Dungeons & Dragons. And I think my list might surprise some of you, and some of you who know me a little bit better probably won't be as surprised. So I decided to just make a video about it and see what maybe your favorite classes or subclasses are, and maybe there are some things that I haven't seen on certain subclasses that you like that might be able to change my mind on my list and maybe replace some of my favorites with one of yours. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your innkeeper, and today we'll be talking about my top 10 favorite subclasses for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Now, before I start, I do want to give the caveats because it's YouTube. I kind of have to. So this list is not at all me saying these are the strongest 10 classes in the game. Not at all. These are my favorite subclasses to play. And it might be because of flavor, it might be because of theme, but it's always a combination. I do like a good mix of theme and power level. If a class has a really cool theme, but the power level is not super great, generally it's not a class that I care about. And vice versa. If it's a super powerful class, but it really lacks in theme, again, or I can't wrap my head around the theme, for example, the Armor Artificer, I get a lot of hate for that, but I do not care for the theme at all. It's a good class, sure, mechanically, not a class I would ever play. But you might like it, and that's okay. That's totally fine, just not for me. So with that said, I do want to have one honorary mention, and that is the Circle of Spores Druid. That class is super cool theme-wise. I love the theme. I like dark stuff. Horror is my top favorite thing ever. Lovecraftian horror specifically, but all forms of horror are really cool. And I think that the Circle of Spores Druid is such a different take on the Druid that still has to do with nature, but embraces a different aspect of nature, the inevitability of death and decay. And I really love that theme. It's just too bad that the subclass is just lacking so much in mechanics. Even if it was mediocre, I think I would really add it to my top 10 list. But I've tried playing one before. I just could not get it to work properly. It's very, very clunky the way that the abilities work with the spellcasting and everything else. It's a subclass that seems to be fighting with itself. It wants to be melee based, but it doesn't have enough support to be a melee type of character. And it just kind of falls apart because of that. So unfortunately, despite its amazing theme, it is not a class that generally I like to play. So with the honorary mention out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with my top 10. And these are in order, so I'm going to start with my least favorite of my top 10 and go down to my top favorite subclass in the entire game. Starting with number 10, it's going to be the Peace Domain Cleric. I usually don't play clerics too much, but when I do, I really like the feel of the Peace Domain. I think clerics are interesting in the sense that they go for this kind of devout nature for the divine, and they serve kind of multiple roles within a party. A lot of times they're misunderstood, although the Peace Domain Cleric is something that I feel kind of embodies this messiah kind of feel to it. I really love the idea of having a robed cleric just walk right into the middle of the battlefield and not care about everything that's going on. All they care about is just healing, and they can walk by. There's an ability that they get where they can just, anyone they walk by, they can just touch them and heal them for 2d8 health and not provoke attacks of opportunity while they're doing so. So you're literally parading yourself in the middle of the battlefield, just touching everyone, healing them, and going about your business. I really love the idea. I like to mix this subclass with the spell Sanctuary to really, really emphasize the theme of nobody wants to attack you because you're just so peaceful and you're just there to make sure everyone stays alive. And I think it's a really cool concept. The next subclass that I like to play is going to be the Artificer Battlesmith. I have a whole series on the Artificer Battlesmith, and I think it's a really interesting concept. It's a subclass that you can really kind of customize to your liking, and there's so much openness and availability as to what you can make your steel defender. It can be animalistic, it could be robotic if you're into that, or it could be, somewhat humanoid, or maybe something completely different. And it doesn't have to necessarily be some kind of robot looking thing. Because it's infused by magic, you can make it into whatever you want. And since my favorite race in the game is the gnome, gnomes tend to have kind of a lore about them in terms of making clockwork machines and things like that, and being really good at it, but also really kind of clumsy with it. So I think the Artificer Battlesmith embodies that, and it's a really cool subclass that works really well too as a versatile character that can fill in the role of frontline combatant, tank, as well as healer, and maybe a little bit of battlefield control. So a good mix of abilities along with a pretty interesting theme, and that's why it is number 9 for me. Number 8 is the Chronurgy Wizard. I really am interested in the concept of time. Of course, I'm really into Lovecraft, and time and space are kind of themes that kind of make their way into a lot of Lovecraft stories, and I think the concept of time is very interesting. And having a spellcaster who has mastered that is something that really interests me as well. And I think that they made a really good compromise between not making it too overpowered, but also giving it some interesting spells and abilities that no other wizards get that will help kind of solidify the theme of having control over time. And the Chronurgy Wizard is a very powerful subclass. I think it's one of the top 5 subclasses for wizard in terms of power level, and theme-wise, I think it really is a solid theme as well. Number 7 on my list is the College of Swords Bard. I love the ability of the Swords Bard. The Blade was a really cool class way back in 2nd edition, and I think the Swords Bard is an interesting take on the Blade. It's probably not as thematic as the 2nd edition version, but I think that they did with it what they could for 5th edition and its limitations. And the Swords Bard may not be your strongest melee combatant, but remember that they're still a full caster, so they have the ability to hold their own in melee should they need to, but they also have all the abilities of a normal bard, and I think that's interesting. Also, a showman with swords and blades, someone from, a circus or a street performer that's good with blades, or maybe just someone who is a very show-offy type of individual. If you watch Game of Thrones, there's the guy who was training Arya Stark in the very beginning. I feel like that probably could be someone who might be a swords bard because he's very showy and very flashy with his moves, and that's kind of the feeling I get with the swords bard. I think it's a really cool class, and the bard can be a little cheesy, I think some people feel, if you don't play them right, but I think the swords bard kind of prevents it from becoming a little too cheesy. Down to number 6, it is the Gloomstalker Ranger. I think the Gloomstalker has so much flavor and theme. I ran a campaign for Out of the Abyss, the official book from 5th edition, and I thought it was such a fun campaign. I have an entire video detailing all of the events that occurred within that campaign, kind of how it played. It's my campaign reflections video, my very first full-term campaign that I ever ran as a dungeon master, and the themes within that campaign with the Underdark and all this interesting cities within the underground portion of Faerun was something really cool. And after that campaign came out, maybe a year or 2 after is when Xanathar's Guide came out. Maybe it was even more than that. Maybe it was 3 years after. But Xanathar's Guide released the Gloomstalker Ranger, and I think the Gloomstalker is an awesome subclass. Again, just like the Spores Druid, it's a completely different take on the Ranger. The Ranger is known to be someone who is in touch with nature, but as opposed to the Druid who wants to protect animals and nature, the Ranger is more of a human's first approach where they are trackers. They know how to use nature to their advantage. They're hunters, so they always have food available. Unlike Druids who are not necessarily hunting animals to eat them, the Ranger does if they want to, right? So the Ranger is a tracker, a hunter, and this kind of thing. And I think the Gloomstalker took that theme and adapted it to the Underdark. And you don't have to be from the Underdark to be a Gloomstalker Ranger, but I think it fits in real well because you're in the dark, cavernous regions of the underground of Faerun, and it's still nature. It's still the wilderness. It's just a different type of wilderness. And you've learned to adapt and hunt and track people within this new environment. And you've learned to adapt to this type of environment as a ranger. So I think it's a really cool take on the ranger, and the creators were really smart to come up with something like this. It's not something that I would have even thought a ranger would be about, but it really opened up my mind into just how diverse certain subclasses and themes can be without necessarily having to change too much. You just have to be a little bit more creative and have a little bit of imagination. So that's why I really like the Gloomstalker. And of course, their abilities are super powerful. You have the ability to become invisible to any creature that has night vision. You have really cool abilities for winning initiative and going first in initiative. It is just a type of character that is meant to be a sort of hunter within the darker areas of nature. Next up on my list is the Undead Warlock. The Undead Warlock just came out recently as of the making of this video. It's been out for about a year, I think, or a year and a half. To me, that's fairly recent. And it's an interesting take on the Warlock. It's something that they tried before with the Undying. Unfortunately, it didn't work out too well because the game was still in its infancy when they attempted it. So they went back and they kind of redid it, making it slightly different, but slightly similar, but better. And I think that they succeeded this time around. I've always thought the Warlock was missing some kind of patron that was dealing with an undead, very powerful undead being, like a Lich or a Draco Lich or something like that. And I think in this iteration, they really nailed it. The ability to transform into an undead being, the ability to deal additional necrotic damage or convert your damage into necrotic, all very, very thematic. And then the super powerful ability of causing creatures to get the fear condition every time you hit them. That is so strong. That is something that can make you an amazing controller while being a frontliner as well, or even from the backlines, to be honest. It is such a cool concept, and I'm glad that they decided to try it again, and this time make it something that really oozes theme for the Warlock. Next up is the Divine Soul Sorcerer. I love the Sorcerer class. Obviously, I make a lot of videos about the Sorcerer, and I think the Divine Soul is so unique to other sorcerers that it definitely deserves to be on this list. I've managed to make a couple of Divine Soul Sorcerer characters, and I always have a great time. They end up being really powerful healers and party defenders. They make your party nearly unkillable if you make them right. In the book that I'm writing, The Innkeeper's Guide to the Sorcerer for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, I make a build for single class sorcerer character for every single one of the sorcerer subclasses that are officially available for the game. And my Divine Soul is one of my proudest achievements. I think it is a character build that will really keep up with tables, even tables where you have a lot of power gamer players. I think this character can really keep up with that type of group, but also not overshadow anybody else in a table that is not a power gaming table. And I am not a power gamer, or even so much as an optimizer. I'm maybe just below an optimizer, and I still think that this character can really keep up with the best of them. But the main reason I like the Divine Sorcerer is because you have literally the largest available list of spells to pick from. Sure, your choices are extremely limited by the time you're 20th level, unless you picked any feats or races that give you extra spells. You're literally down to 15 spells from this huge list of hundreds and hundreds of spells. But the fact that the list is so large, I think it makes this one of the most complex characters for new players. The options are just too overwhelming. Someone who is a more experienced player will probably really like this because they kind of know what spells go with what for synergy, and then you'll be able to maximize the benefits of this type of character. But even some experienced players have trouble with the Divine Soul. So I've made some videos regarding it, and in my book, I go deep into explaining the Divine Soul Sorcerer and trying to make it as understandable for you as possible. And I've made the build that I was talking about. This character makes the Divine Soul just an awesome character to have. And combined with the meta magic options that the Sorcerer has, the Cleric spell list really shines tremendously in the hands of a capable Divine Soul Sorcerer. And I've made a couple of these characters before and played through them and really enjoyed them every single time. So excellent subclass. And now for the top 3, my top 3 favorite subclasses. Number 3 is the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. Again, as I've said, I love the Sorcerer class and I love Lovecraft. So what do you do when you combine the two? you get the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, and that is Lovecraft done right. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you really like the theme of cosmic horror and just mind-altering magic, the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer is bar none the best subclass you can take for that. Not only that, but they're one of the absolute strongest sorcerer subclasses in the game. In my opinion, the strongest. You get a lot of versatility with the spell list that you can take, and you get so many more spells known that it literally becomes a competitor to the wizard in terms of the amount of versatility that you can have with your character. Plus, you also get meta magic, which makes it even better, and some additional abilities that other sorcerers do not have, like a cheaper way to convert sorcery points into spells, so you're able to maximize how many spells you can cast per day and literally be able to cast more spells in a day than any other class. So super, super awesome, super powerful, just a combination of flavor and power, and I think it is an amazing subclass. Number 2, we have the Enchanter Wizard, and as much as I love sorcerers, I gotta say, the Wizard is still the most powerful class in the game. The Enchanter Wizard, for me, is the most fun. The Enchanter Wizard has some really cool abilities like Hypnotic Gaze. You can combine that with invisibility and just walk around the battlefield literally hypnotizing people, and they can do nothing about it because they can't see you. You just whisper in their ear. As long as they can hear you, you can enchant them, and it doesn't use any resources. And then you can go around doing that, or you can get people to succumb to your will. And then later on in higher levels, you're able to split enchantment. So it's basically like the Sorcerer's Twin spell, but only for enchantment spells. So you can cast Hold Person and twin it without using any additional resources. It's a really cool subclass, and the theme of being an enchanter is really, really interesting. What I like to do with my enchanters, I've made, I think, 3 or 4 enchanter wizards now, because it is one of my favorite subclasses. What I like to do is combine the enchantment portion of it with another school. So, for example, the latest one that I made is an enchanter illusionist. So this guy was a performer. He was kind of a street magician that still had a little bit of book knowledge for actual spells and would perform for entertainment purposes, but then went into adventuring. So this guy can hypnotize people and he can create illusions on the other end, and the two combined I think work really well together. But I've done other combinations like an enchanter necromancer. This guy was kind of a vampire character. He was a Dampier, and he would enchant people to lure them and then drink their blood, and once they were dead, bring them back into his own subordinates, into zombies and that kind of thing. A little darker of a theme, a little more evil, but still something that you can do and mix and match with the enchanter. So there are many ways to flavor it, so you're not just a basic enchanter. I do think that the enchantment school of magic has limitations for higher levels. A lot of creatures are immune to charm and fear effects, which are the major strengths of the enchantment school. So I think supplementing it with a secondary school is the way to go. Of course, you don't have to do that. If your campaign tends to have a lot less creatures that are immune to these type of things, then it should work just fine. And number 1 on my list is the Archfey Warlock. Some of you may have already suspected this because, yes, the Warlock is my number 1 favorite class in the game. Some of you might be surprised at that because I've made so many Sorcerer videos. Now I'm just starting to make a Warlock series, but the Warlock is truly my favorite class in the game. They have a lot of customizable capabilities between the invocations, your patron, and then your gift from your patron. I think there are so many different directions that you can take each character. And of course, just the theme of the Warlock itself already lends to creating a really cool backstory for your character. The way that your patron has decided to aid you could already start to plant seeds in your mind as to what your backstory is going to be for your character. So the Warlock is a fantastic class, my favorite class in the entire game. They have some really cool mix of abilities, spells. They're kind of a spellcaster, but they're kind of a distant martial character. They're really, really cool and have some really interesting abilities that differentiate them from most other characters. The Archfey is one that I think oozes with theme. I love teleportation spells and illusion magic, and I think the Archfey having both of those type of spells really brings about the theme of the Feywild. And having an Archfey patron could be something as fun and whimsical as a fairy being your patron, or a hag being your patron, and that could be something really dark and dangerous and maybe a little bit evil. So there are many ways that you can go about it, where the undead warlock tends to, well, yeah, you can have some good aligned undead, but in the end, an undead patron is still an undead patron, right? Whereas the Archfey tends to be more open into being something fun and whimsical or something dark and brooding. Even other subclasses for the Warlock aren't as wide open as the Archfey thematically. The Fiend, you're always going to have a Fiend patron if you're a Fiend, right? So Fiends are always evil, whether it's a devil or a demon or something in between. Same thing for Undead. Same thing for, Divine. There are some things that you can take there as leeway, but not quite as much as the Archfey, and that's what I really like about them. So thematically, I think they're wonderful, and mechanically, the Warlock already as it is probably one of the best classes in the game. So as far as versatility for the different aspects of the game, I think that the Paladin and the Warlock both have like the strongest. So even though I think that the Wizard is the strongest character class in the game, I think that the Warlock, along with the Paladin, are the most well-rounded character classes in the game. The Wizard, yes, is very powerful, but they are a glass cannon, whereas the Paladin and the Warlock have different abilities that will help them in different areas of the game, such as social situations, exploration, and much else. They have just such a mix of abilities that will allow them to be far more well-rounded than your typical Wizard. So I think that the Warlock and the Paladin are just the top-notch, most versatile classes in the game. The Wizard being the strongest, but not as versatile per se. Yes, their spells can be versatile as far as utility, but I hope you understand what I'm saying by versatile. Anyways, I do like the Warlock as my favorite class. My second favorite class is the Wizard, and my third favorite class is the Sorcerer. So all arcane spellcasters, yes, those are my favorite classes in the game, and my favorite subclass in the game is the Archfey Warlock. So, with all that said, what are your favorite subclasses in the game and why? I'd love to hear about it. Maybe you've come up with some cool concept for your character that might change my mind on my list, or maybe there are some things and limitations to some of these subclasses that I haven't thought about that will make me want to take them out of the list if you let me know about them. I'd love to hear about all of it. Thank you guys very much, and leave your comments and questions
down there
in the comments down below. As always, I'm your Innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then. God damn it.